And Taoiseach, like you, I want to acknowledge the very sad news emerging from Donabate, and we all think of the little boy Daniel Arabose. Our councillor Corinna Johnston expressing this morning on the radio the great sadness and distress of the community in Donabate at the sad find. Taoiseach, the genocide taking place in Gaza has reached intolerable levels of cruelty and carnage over the summer. More than 65,000 people killed. A famine declared. The Famine Review Committee saying 100% of the population in Gaza now experiencing high levels of acute food insecurity. Children dying of starvation, being orphaned, being shot in the head in the street. There are literally no words to describe the destruction of human life and infrastructure that we're witnessing on a daily basis. And words fail us all, I think, when we learn of the atrocities being committed by Israel. Taoiseach, the findings of the UN Commission of Inquiry this week should be a turning point for the world, and its conclusion that a genocide is being committed in Gaza should change things. But Taoiseach, the advisory opinion of the ICJ last year should have changed things too, as should the constant stream of deeply horrifying reports from UNRWA, from UNICEF, from individual medics and journalists working in Gaza. But instead what we've seen is indifference and indeed encouragement by the likes of Germany and by the US, which have egged on Netanyahu and his brutal regime. By arming Israel, those countries are being complicit in the committing of genocide. So Taoiseach, Israel must be isolated by the international community. In every global forum, culturally, in sport, in academia, through trade, in goods and in services. And I know we all agree no country is too small to make an impact, and Ireland is making an impact, and we've acknowledged your government has been to the fore among European countries. But we can do better, we can do more, and no delay can be justified. On Monday, I joined organisations, including the Congress of Trade Unions, Oxfam, Christian Aid and others, at the gates of Leinster House with Senator Francis Black. We're calling for urgent implementation of the Occupied Territories Bill in full, because new research reveals the extent to which EU trade in both goods and services with illegal Israeli settlements. This trade is directly contributing to serious breaches of international law in Palestine. Companies implicated include eDreams, TUI Travel, BNP Paribas, HSBC, Barclays. At home, a Guardian investigation in August revealed that illegally recorded Palestinian phone calls recorded by the Israeli military, these audio files are being stored on Microsoft servers here in Ireland, in Irish data centres. One whistleblower from Microsoft telling The Guardian that suddenly the entire public in Palestine is our enemy. The scale of the illegal interception is extraordinary. And Taoiseach, we cannot stand by while Netanyahu's brutal project is being facilitated by Irish-based infrastructure. We cannot put an FDI-shaped price on human rights. So I welcome the new approach by the European Commission this week and proposed suspension of the Israel-EU agreement. But we cannot leave our response in the hands of obstructive states like Hungary. And I know you've taken issue with them. We need to set an example here. Taoiseach, will you legislate to ban the trade with occupied territories this autumn in goods and in services? Will you take on board the bill that Duncan Smith has proposed for Labour to protect workers who refuse to handle goods coming from the illegal Israeli settlements?
Thanks very much, Deputy Bacik. And I don't know your councillor, Corinna Johnson, but I heard her on Morning Ireland this morning, and I thought she spoke for so many people and for her community in terms of the very, very tragic situation. I thank her for that. Look, firstly, to thank you and your party for the constructive engagement, and of course we'll give consideration to Deputy Smith's bill. Can I just say, from an Irish perspective, literally around now, we've seen 15 young Palestinians safely evacuated from Gaza. 14 of them students who will be coming to study here in Ireland, and one of them coming here on a critical skills visa. They're safely in Jordan, where they'll be medically screened. Obviously they're coming from a famine zone, a war zone, a place where genocide's happening, and they're due to arrive in Ireland tomorrow. And I just want to thank everybody who's worked so hard. It's very complex to get people, as you can imagine, evacuated from Gaza. You're also right. I mean, we didn't need in this House, or indeed in Ireland, anybody else to tell us there's a genocide happening in Gaza. We're one of the first countries in Europe, if not the first, to call it what it is. But the UN independent inquiry has now found the same thing. We've also seen statements of fact around a man-made famine now in Gaza. So this is no longer just Ireland's view or my view or your view. These are views that are factually based, that are evidence-based, that the world can't ignore. And I do think the European Commission's decision yesterday is hugely significant, because as you know from your engagements at a European level, and as I know from mine, we've been minority voices in this country for quite a long time, and now to have the European Commission ratify proposals yesterday that are very, very far-reaching, quite appropriate and very delayed, by the way, but is not an insignificant moment. I think it's actually a very, very important moment. In practice, this would have a very significant impact on Israel economically, and I believe has the potential to change Netanyahu's calculus in relation to the continuance of the genocide in Gaza. So my priority in the here and now has to be, and I think you'd expect it to be, to try and see if we can get a majority of member states to vote for these sanctions and to vote for them very quickly. The next meeting of the Foreign Affairs Council outside a UN one next week isn't due to be for about 6 weeks, same with the European Council. There's a genocide going on. We can't wait a further 6 weeks after all the inaction to date. So I'm leading a diplomatic effort to try and get a number of member states to seek an urgent meeting so that member states can vote, and nowhere to hide here. You're either in favour or you're against these measures to try and help end a genocide, and I hope that can happen as well. At a domestic level, I spoke to Senator Black briefly the other day, and I'm due to meet her on my return from the UN high-level week, which is taking place next week. We are still committed to legislating. Party leaders will shortly meet the Attorney General on how best to do that, and I'm happy to brief opposition as well. But I have to be honest with this House, I have to be honest with the people of Ireland. Passing our own legislation, again, I don't dismiss that. I'm committed to doing it. But if we want to make impact here, acting at an EU level has always been the best way to do it, because while the political power may seem to be whatever goes on between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, the economic ability that Europe has in relation to Israel and making it change its course is hugely significant.
Well, I thank you for that comprehensive response, Taoiseach, and would welcome a briefing on the Occupied Territories Bill, anything to move things on there. And I absolutely agree with you, the need for transnational and international action. But we can and should also be acting unilaterally, because we have a strong voice of moral authority. And there are like-minded states, and I know this from my engagement at EU level. Spain and Belgium are with us on this, Taoiseach, so we can and should do more on the Occupied Territories Bill. And similarly on the evacuees from Palestine, and I do welcome that, and I welcome your announcement that 15 will arrive tomorrow. I think there were due to be 30, and certainly I've been working with you and the Minister for Justice to try and ensure we see family reunification for those who've already come here from Gaza on the Medivac programme, some of whom are living in my own constituency and who are desperately distressed as they watch their family members under daily bombardment from Israel back in Gaza. And we are doing all we can to try and get them out, Taoiseach, and I would really welcome more effort from government on that, to get family members out to join the people who are already here. Can I say on the EU level, I welcome your push for an urgent meeting, and can I ask that you would also push at UN level? The government supported a Labour motion in May looking for Ireland to push it at UN level through the General Assembly for the United Nations to take action towards securing a lasting ceasefire in Gaza. And can I ask that you would push on that too?
Yes, so I mean we can and will take action at the national level. I think there's a political consensus around that. We all gave commitments in the election. Happy to do that. But if you also remember, I suppose, the government's position, the previous government's position always was, could we get to a point where Europe might actually act? And that looked very remote back when this genocide started. It now looks like a distinct prospect, and we've got to try and see this through. But one way or the other, in a democratic Europe, we have every right to be able to vote for these proposals and to show that we are voting to take this action against Israel to try and stop what Netanyahu is doing, and that needs to happen. It needs to happen quickly. And you're right, we're not alone. Slovenia, Spain, as you said, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, I think there's a growing coalition. And indeed France, I think, has played a very constructive role. We may see our near neighbours in the UK take their own decision on recognition in the coming days, which would be a welcome step forward. On evacuations, we remain committed to this. The Minister for Health is doing very good work on this from a medical point of view. We're doing good work in terms of those looking to come here to study as well. We all know there's complexity around this, but anyone we can help in that context, we are helping. And finally, at a UN level, absolutely. Myself, the Taoiseach and Minister Richmond will be in New York for UN High Level Week next week, and this will be a major priority, as you'd imagine.